and it was named for its sponsor, Justin Morrill, and it established public lands to be used for land-grant colleges that teach agriculture and mechanical arts. And then in 1887, the Hatch Act was passed, and this set up our agricultural experiment stations. So there's one associated with each land-grant university in each state. And I'm going to kind of generalize here when I say that there is about one land grant, one 1862 land grant per state. Some might have more, but for the sake of simplicity, we'll say one. And there's usually one main agricultural experiment station within that state, and often several satellite stations. So here at UW-Madison, University of Wisconsin-Madison is our land grant university for Wisconsin. And we have our main agricultural experiment station here in Madison. And we have a number of satellite stations throughout the state. So that's kind of the general idea of how the experiment stations work across the country in different states. Also in 1946, the Research and Marketing Act was passed. And what this did was it set aside 25% of the Hatch funds from the Hatch Act in 1887 to be used for regional research. So that's multi-state research, basically. You can look at it that way. We were also established the NCRA in 1946 to assist with planning and management of these regional research activities, which we still do today. We use computers, we use our online database, so it's a lot easier than it used to be. Before I started, it was all printed out, put it in a filing cabinet, just very burdensome. So I'm very happy about our online NIMS database. We do a number of other things as well. We have our office. We host and plan meetings, other activities. This year we did what was called LGU2U, and it was a way of getting together USDA NIFA staff with staff from the land-grant universities. So that's just one example of what our regional office does. You name it, we probably do it if it's related to ag research in the North Central region. And then in 1998, the Agricultural Research, Extension, and Education Reform Act, ARERA, establishes the Multi-State Research Fund, peer review, and then also integrated research with extension activities as well. All right, let's see. So multi-state projects specifically, we have our multi-state projects to address regional or national agricultural issues through multidisciplinary research by scientists at land-grant universities and experiment stations in more than one state. But it's not limited to just participants at land-grant universities or experiment stations. In the North Central region, we'll have a lot of participants from overseas. We'll have participants from industry, universities that are not considered land grants. We'll have participants from the Ag Research Service, that's USDA ARS, as well as many other participants. So it's not limited to just land grants and experiment stations. And when I say multidisciplinary, I'm talking about anything from agricultural economists all the way through basic research. We might have extension representatives, people with teaching expertise. We're getting all of these people together to work on a project, to share information, share their research and expertise, and make these projects more than just the individual research that's going on at each institution. So it's a good way to get together with other people in your field, get together, learn about new technologies, maybe share some technologies, share equipment. Just a great way to get to know some other people in your area, maybe work together on a federal grant. Lots of benefits for this. So the ARERA Act in 1998, which I mentioned before, so that allocated 25% for multi-state research. And then it also, we need to expend 25% or 2 times the base of fiscal year 1997, whichever is less, on integrating these research activities with extension as well. And then in the North Central region, we have a number of different multi-state project types, and they all have slightly different functions. So I'll start with our NCs. They are the engine of our multi-state research portfolio. These are often referred to, you might see them as NC research type, NC type projects. These are 5-year multi-state projects. They receive travel funds for their participants from their ag experiment station offices, as well as, depending upon the institution, they may receive some additional funds for research activities, maybe some salary, some funding towards graduate students, postdocs. How that money is spent beyond just the travel funds, it is at the discretion of the individual experiment station. So it's going to vary a little bit depending on the institution. When somebody wants to start a multi-state research project, we recommend that they start with what's called the DC. So that's the development committee. It's 2 years, it's funded for travel, and it's a way for researchers to get together and meet and come and write a full 5-year proposal for either an NC, one of these ERAs, which is an extension and research integrated activity, a coordinating committee, it's an information exchange group. And we also have our rapid response projects. So these, as the name indicates, it's a rapid response. It's a way to address an emergency, a critical acute issue that might come up, for instance, during the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. We might find some researchers working on a swine respiratory issue or a poultry respiratory issue, and they want to get together. They have 2 years for this project. They would present it to our association, our chair would approve it. We used to need to get NIFA approval for it. NIFA would have 5 days to approve it, and if 5 days passed, it would be automatically approved in this case. So we don't currently have any of these active, but that's what those are for. And they are funded like the NC types. So they would receive travel funds for participants, as well as some additional funding at the discretion of the experiment station for additional research or other similar activities for that project. And then finally, our advisory committees. These work a little bit differently than the other projects I've talked about. They serve as our experts. They're comprised of department heads in a given field. And we use them from my perspective, mainly to review our projects when our projects are up for review, or we have new projects coming into the system. The department head in a given field will review these projects, provide expert review. We don't use peer reviews in the North Central region usually, unless we have a project for which we don't have an associated advisory committee. So these are our different types of projects. It's a lot to remember. You'll have these slides available to you afterwards too, and you can always come to me if you have any questions. So, all right, so we are the NCRA, as Dr. Jose indicated before. So we're for the North Central region, all of these states. We oversee any of the NC multi-state research projects, as well as the activities of our experiment station directors. There's also the Association of Research Directors. And this association is for the 1890s, the historically Black land-grant colleges. We have the Northeast Association. The Southern region also includes Puerto Rico, and then the Western region. So most of the states in the Western continental US, as well as Alaska, Hawaii, and some of the insulars in the Pacific. So down here, you'll see if you're going through the NIM system and you're looking for multi-state research projects that you might want to join, just because you're in the North Central region doesn't mean you can't join something from the Northeast or the Southern region. Please feel free. These are national in scope. The designation, it's just basically which association is going to manage that project. So you'll see NC projects, NE, Southern projects, and Western region projects. Our ARD friends don't have multi-state research projects that they are leading up, but they are welcome to join any of our projects. I work with a number of people from Lincoln University. I'll add them onto projects and kind of help them out with that too. Okay, and now for the North Central region, as of 2022, we have 49 NC type projects. So again, those are our research projects, 19 extension and research integrated activity projects, 13 coordinating committees. We don't currently have any DCs, but I hear that there's one in the works. We have 10 advisory committees. And again, these were the ones made up of department heads in a given field, and currently no rapid response projects. So that's our inventory right now. We also have our multi-state research committee. And in the North Central region, they're a group of directors. It's a rotating 3-year cycle. Our directors volunteer to review our multi-state projects, new projects up for renewal, and they will look at the information from those NCACs, those advisory committees, and make a final recommendation that's voted on by our entire NCRA association. We also partner with USDA NIFA, regional associations, and then finally, very important for these multi-state projects, they are led by what's called an administrative advisor. You might hear the term AA, so that means administrative advisor. Now, this person basically functions as a liaison between our office and the committee members on these multi-state projects. They are not necessarily directly involved with any of the research or the report writing or proposal preparation for these projects, but they do help with administrative tasks in our NIMS database. They attend annual meetings. They make sure projects are moving forward with their stated objectives, that projects are meeting annually and submitting annual reports. So they're critical. It's the only way we can manage all of these projects is through the help of our administrative advisors. And then, as I mentioned before, financial support. We do expect that if an ag experiment station is adding a participant to a project, that they will at least fund travel for one meeting for the main representative on that project. And then additional financial support is at the discretion of the experiment station. Okay, and then we also have what are called National Research Support Projects, or NRSPs. These are, the best way I can describe them is they are a national multi-state project. So they're not necessarily coming from North Central or Northeast or the Southern region. They are national in scope, and they are reviewed by our National NRSP Review Committee. They do receive off-the-top funding. So that is funding that is pulled out of the National Hatch Multi-State Fund and then distributed to members on that particular project before the Hatch Multi-State is distributed to the individual institutions. So these are national projects. We have a lot of people from the North Central serving as administrative advisors. They may be participants on the project. So a lot of good representation across the country for these NRSPs. Reporting for all of the multi-state projects, we require an annual report. We want the annual report to be multi-state and collaborative in focus. We don't want to see individual lists of station reports. We would like that report to showcase how this project is more than the sum of its parts. What are the multi-state impacts? What are the multi-state accomplishments? That's what we want to see in our reporting for these. We do a midterm review that's conducted by the administrative advisor. It's a quick and easy form in the NIM system. I also take a look at these projects, make sure that they're meeting, reports look good. I'll reach out if anything needs to be fixed. There's also a final project report. So that's usually submitted in the final year, and it's usually a summary of all the activities for that past 5 years. We have an Excellence in Multi-State Research Award, kind of a little bit of additional motivation for our multi-state projects to continue being excellent. And you can read more about that here, what the criteria are for these awards, but we have some great projects that have come out of that. There's one winner per region, and then we pick from each regional winner, we do pick a national winner, and that national winner receives $15,000. And then finally, I alluded to this a little bit before, we have our Multi-State Research Funds Impact Database, and that's run by Sarah Delheimer, our Impact Program Coordinator. If you get a chance to check out this website, it's really great. It showcases our multi-state research, the value of our multi-state research in a way that is accessible to anyone. Real beautiful graphics, infographics, pictures, short and sweet. You can print these out. You can take these to meetings, share with stakeholders, local, national. Just want to get a good idea of what some of the projects are doing. Check out this website too. There's a lot of good work there. Okay, and then on to Jeff. He'll talk about some of the participant benefits on these multi-state projects.
Thanks, Chris. And we should have posted a warning that we're going to be throwing an acronym or 2 or 10 at you throughout. We've tried to minimize those because there's nothing more challenging than learning a new language. And there is a little bit of a new language associated with multi-state projects. You get there fast, but it's just kind of the nature of the beast, if you will. So next couple slides are going to try and capture some conversations, some experiences across participants that have served on multi-state committees of all different kinds and shapes, different regions, as well as from administrative advisors, those AAs and so forth, that they have seen and experienced throughout the course of their career. So these are not just what Jeff and Chris and somebody else made up, if you will. These are from actual participants, summarized by us, certainly. So if you think about the real purpose of the multi-state committees, kind of getting at the why, and here's some added value, if you will, it's science, right? And it could, that science, that research can be in collaboration with extension faculty members, or maybe that's one and the same, and or teaching. So you have all these different people that come together to work on a specific multi-state project. It has a title, it's got objectives, and then all kinds of activities and justifications associated with that. There will be assistant professors, associate professors, non-tenure track professors, and and others, as Chris mentioned, that are non-land grant types that will participate, depending upon the nature of the particular project. So it's a rich environment, and you've got the framework of being interested in the topic. Those are the people in the room, if you will. Natural collaborators, some of them might be mentors if you're a newer faculty member, or if you're shifting gears to doing a new track in a particular aspect of science. But they're going to be natural collaborators with you, with your active participation on a particular project. Emphasizing a couple of points that Chris touched upon earlier, what multi-state collaborations and projects are about are leveraging. First and foremost, leveraging the expertise, the intellectual power that you have as cutting edge scientists, and then fill in the blank in terms of what aspect of science and extension and education you're involved with. That's first and foremost. That's the basis for. In addition to that, there may be some unique facilities that Missouri has that Ohio State does not have, or North Dakota State, or California for that matter, that brings people together, and collaboration-wise, you can use some of that facility, whether it be lab, greenhouse, field facilities. Same thing with equipment. There's a number of different multi-state projects that, fundamental to their success, they go and spend some time at some of the national labs. So every institution, every land-grant university can have widget A in down the hall, right? They've got to share and leverage resources such as that. Oftentimes in today's world, we're talking about massive amounts of information, massive amounts of data. Databases are created for the participants on this project, as well as other projects and scientists that you can share. So those are just some examples of what prior participants have experienced in terms of the benefits, getting at the why question. In addition to that, if you think about who's in the room, there could be future grant panel managers, grant panels where you might have a grant submitted to. You never know. It's a confidential process, right? Journal editors, anonymous reviewers. Hopefully, everybody in there is interested in being a successful faculty member, just thinking about the land-grant university folks, but it could be beyond that. They might be reviewers for your retention and or promotion and or tenure packages as time goes on as well, either from your recommendation or from your department or your unit, division, if you will. And then as time goes on, depending upon the project, certainly postdocs and graduate students might be in the room as well, supported by grant resources, not necessarily hatch funds. They're part of the environment. They might be your future graduate student, and you develop relationships with other participants where you're doing masters and they're doing PhDs, and you swap over time. And that has occurred quite frequently. Next. So Chris touched upon this, and I just want to emphasize this too, that while these are a unique facet of the 1862 land-grant universities Hatch Act, and that's the funding pathway that NIFA provides these resources to enhance the federal-state partnership with research, depending upon the project, there could be other stakeholders. She mentioned USDA ARS, could be industry scientists, research scientists, collaborators from across whatever border you might be thinking about. State and federal agencies can participate, depending on the nature of the project. So it's very inclusive in terms of membership, as long as it fits with the group and things are advancing according to plan, if you will, the project plan. In addition, there are NIFA national program leaders, division directors, et cetera, that serve as a liaison, that go to these multi-state committees as a mechanism to stay current in their field, depending upon the nature of the project. So you will get to know those individuals as well. Used to be they were all in Kansas City, in Washington, D.C. Some are in Kansas City, some are elsewhere in this virtual world, but they're a great connector for you. They're the ones that modify some of the RFAs that NIFA rolls out for different aspects of program. How is the direction of those? Well, it's certainly on high within USDA and the administration, but it also intersects with whatever the science is telling us, whatever the needs are. In time, these multi-state projects go through a kind of a leadership transition of who plans a meeting, who organizes it, guest speakers, field tours. Again, it's pretty open. Once you do the core business at hand, you can build your leadership skills, communication skills that might lead to bigger grants, an AFRI CAP grant, or think of a different agency. It doesn't have to be tied directly to USDA NIFA. I will upfront say that there are accountability requirements, and we'll touch upon those a little bit. I will date myself and say, back in the day, they used to be quite onerous and really a pain. Presently, and Chris mentioned, technology, certainly that's a great enhancement, but the volume is less, the focus is more. We're only asking what we need, we being State Ag Experimentation, the system, the state, the system, and then accountability-wise back to NIFA through some different mechanisms. So it's not as onerous as some folks might say that have a reflection on back in the day when they were richly involved with multi-state projects. Chris also has mentioned that financial support of various shapes and forms, and this is very specific to the state, the director, Dr. Jose. The bare minimum that we have a general agreement on is travel to meetings, one rep per institution. There can be several reps per institution, but typically one would get travel support, but there could be many other aspects of support in use of these funds to further the multi-state objectives. Next. Okay, a little bit on the committee. So you have this group. Mechanically, the director's office in Mizzou will have somebody or several people that can formally appoint you to a committee once you decide that's a committee you want to be a part of. So it's a state-specific AES director responsibility. We've mentioned that there are annual meetings, talked about the agenda tied back to the objectives, typically is how the meeting is initially conducted. And then there can be many more value add kinds of things over the course of that day and maybe an additional day. It just varies depending upon project. I do want to emphasize this again, that there are many other participants that can be around the table that can significantly add to the value of your participation. I think of one fairly recent multi-state committee on chronic wasting disease. It's Michigan, it's Wisconsin, it's Minnesota, just to name a few. There are state agency folks around the table. Why? They're interested, they have gaps in their knowledge, so they want research in those gaps. And as a result of the research, they want to improve their practices, their policies, their management of those natural resources. So they want to be a part of it in the room. And that's just one example. There's many different kinds of iterations of that. There are annual reports. Yep, here's this SAES 422. Boom, there's another pseudo acronym, if you will. It's pretty straightforward, okay? We're interested in multi-state work. That's a must. Collaborative, leveraging resources, and yes, publications, kind of the count kinds of things are important, like you would do in an annual review. So you're doing it already. If it's a result of the project, put it in. Ultimately, what we want to see are impacts of the research, whatever shape, form, or fashion that might be. Sometimes it's a projection because it's the work is going to continue on with the next project cycle. So it's going to be 10 years, not the 5-year normal time frame, but you can project out what things are looking like and what you're trying to formally achieve with your science. Chris has mentioned NIMS and MRF impacts. So I'll just skip over those. There is a PowerPoint presentation that we could make available if you're interested. Project renewals, we've talked about a 5-year project. Those are the norm. A couple of the types that Chris talked about are actually 2 years, up to 2 years, but most of them are 5 years. And many projects, if it's on a good topic, if it's good participation, you're planning for renewals because the work is continuing over the course of many cycles and part of your career. Last thing I'll touch upon here is, and this is an evolution report, now it's NRS, individual stations. So Shabu's office and, pick another institution. They must accountability-wise report on the entire portfolio of hatch funds that the state receives, okay? And that's millions of dollars. So when you feed into it, however it's done in Missouri, you will feed in some of your accomplishments through here, but it's a station report. This SAES 422, that's your individual one. And that's what we're saying is not too bad. It's not too onerous. Chris?
Make sure I unmuted myself. All right. Now here's a little information on how do you join a multi-state committee. And I'm thinking that many of the people participating on this call are probably wondering, so what's the difference between a committee and a project? We're using these interchangeably here in this case, so don't get confused there. So you want to, I would suggest you could start by asking your experiment station office if they're familiar with any individual multi-state projects that might be applicable to your job, professional interest, capacities within the project objectives. You can go to the NIMS system, and on the public page, you could do a keyword search, look through there, look for a project that might be interested to you, reach out to that project leadership, get a little bit more information, read the outline, look at the objectives, find something that's a good fit, talk to your experiment station about joining this project. And they'll help you figure out all the paperwork and how to join that project within the NIMS system. That's something I can help you with as well, but ultimately it's up to your experiment station. But if you have any questions about the multi-state projects that are out there, feel free to come to me or go to NIMS and just kind of take a look on your own to look through their tons of projects. And as we said before, everybody can join the multi-state committee, but the financial support will only come to somebody who has an experiment station appointment. Let's see, we fill out what's called an Appendix E. An Appendix E, it just means a participation form in NIMS, so don't get confused there. Again, that's something that's usually completed by your experiment station office, so they'll help you with that. And then periodically, the administrative advisor, you could reach out to that person or again to me to find out more information on a particular multi-state project. I'll know who to ask and get you whatever information you need on that. Okay. Oh, project reviews on back to you, Jeff.
Thank you. Yeah, real quickly. So it's either a renewal or a new project. And some of this we've touched upon, but just want to give you a sense of what's this document in a prescribed format with, headers and so forth, like just like a grant application. What happens to it? Well, it undergoes a review by the administrative advisor, the AA, and that's both for new projects and renewals. They also weigh in on midterm evaluations. So, in year 2, 3 of that 5-year cycle. Then where does it go to? Well, Chris earlier mentioned we have these NCACs, advisory committees of heads and chairs, some more discipline focused individuals that Chris assigns them depending upon the nature of the project to review. And it could be a couple different ACs actually, depending upon the nature of it. They conduct a review. So you have multiple levels of peer review processes, and that feeds into the directors. And the directors have two levels. One is a subset of the North Central directors that are this multi-state research committee that conduct an independent review, and they also factor in the prior reviews from the AAs, from the ACs, and so forth, come up with a recommendation to approve through reject, and there's iterations in between. That ultimately goes to the entire body of NCRA, so the 12 states then vote on it once a year. So that's just a quick tour of the review process. Chris?
So here's a little bit about me. So like I said before, I oversee the North Central Multi-State Research Portfolio. I do reach out to the administrative advisors, usually during the year 3 midterm review. I'll check all the projects, make sure that they're meeting, make sure that they're reporting, that their reporting is looking good. It looks like what we want it to look like. I'll communicate to the AA and some of the project leadership if anything needs to be changed. I help people upload the committee reports, just general assistance that anybody might need on these multi-state projects, share any information, say maybe federal budget information or anything applicable from the NCRA to the AAs and the committees. I just yesterday shared some information about our MRF impacts program, as well as the impact rating workshops that Sarah puts on. And then down at the bottom, you'll see there's a star here. And what I used to do is when the projects were approved by the NCRA, I would then forward them on to the USDA NIFA. Very recently, we've done away with the need for this administrative review by USDA NIFA. So when a project is approved fully by our regional associations, it is then considered fully approved in the NIM system. And that was just a way to make things a lot easier on everybody, lighten the administrative burden for everyone. We do a fairly rigorous review as it is, as Jeff talked about before with these multi-state projects, that it was just one more thing that we didn't need to have to burden NIFA with. So we do review these projects, probably not quite as rigorous as a competitive grant, but we do require a certain level of excellence here. So, all right. I have some additional resources for you as well. I have on our website, I'll click over to our website in just a little bit so you can see what it looks like. Our North Central Virtual Handbook has everything you'll need to know, pretty much everything you need to know on our multi-state research projects, how to start one, how to join one, the responsibilities of the project chair and the administrative advisor, all of that's there with some step-by-step instructions. We have our national guidelines here on our scop.info website. And then, as I mentioned before, our NCRA website, and then our link to the NIM system, the National Information Management Support System. That's where you can go to do a quick search for multi-state projects that you might want to join. And then one other thing I wanted to mention, some of you might be very new to multi-state projects. It may seem a little overwhelming with some of the reporting and the review requirements. All that we ask is if you're new, go ahead and join the project, attend the meeting, see what it's all about. Once you get familiar with the group, you want to take on some leadership opportunities, then you could volunteer to serve as the chair, maybe host a meeting, take on some of the report writing. One of the things I recommend for whoever's creating the report is prior to each annual meeting, send out a template of the information you want to collect to prepare that report. We try to make it as simple for everybody as possible. So please don't be overwhelmed by all of this information. We just want to give you a nice high-level overview of everything. And I will click over just real quick to show you our NCRA website. I'll stop this share and pop over, find where I put that. This is gonna not on the right page, but here we go. All right. Jeff, can you see that? Is that on our website? Great. All right. So this is our North Central Regional Association website here. Got some nice pictures from some of our multi-state research projects. I have our Twitter feed here. We try to put some updated information, any events or news and updates on our main page here. And if you're looking for multi-state project resources, it's conveniently located right here under multi-state and administrative advisor resources. And the first one is our handbook that I linked to in the presentation. And it talks about anything you might need to do in NIMS with a multi-state project, how to join, how to create an annual report if you need to do that. Number 8 here, how to join a multi-state project. I have information. A lot of the stuff we talked about today, the review process. So if you want more information on the NCRA and what we are, pop over to this website, and lots of good reading material for you should you be looking for something to do. So, all right. Let me just make sure I finished. And I've got one more slide. Okay. All right, little closing summary slide here for Jeff.
Yeah, a very quick tour of a foundational program that has been around for decades and decades and decades. Not something to be scared about or disinterested in. It should be something with inquisitive minds you explore because it can help you as a researcher of all shapes and sizes. It is a funded aspect of a partnership between the federal government through NIFA and your state and other states and insular areas, as Chris talked about. It's something to take a look at because I think it provides a catalytic kind of stepping off point, if you will, to jump in with your research. And again, foundational research, applied research, extension outcomes, teaching, et cetera. It's a highly unique system that we embrace, and we hope you do as well. If you haven't picked it up yet, Chris Hamilton is a national leader with this, with NIMS. She's your go-to person. Frankly, it's not Jeff Jacobsen. But I work with her and just admire the knowledge and expertise she has. I can help in different ways as well. So happy to entertain any comments or questions. Thanks for your attention today.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff and Chris. That was excellent. I learned a lot about the multi-state project today. So thank you. I appreciate it very much. So if you have any questions, please post that on the or in the Q&A box, not in the chat room. So while I'm waiting for any questions here, so Jeff, we talked about creating an opportunity, and we have a small grants program now, multi-state. So would you like to say maybe a word or two about that program that we just created?
Absolutely. So what Shabu is referring to is one of the things, well, the North Central region, as you saw numerically, has a lot of multi-state projects. We have more than any other region by a substantial amount. One of the things we're looking for is excellence on excellence, if you will. And to try and nudge that, catalyze it a bit, the NCRA directors opted this current year, and hopefully if it works out in subsequent years, to just provide a little monetary nudge to help get over the hump, to get to that excellent stage of impacts beyond impacts. And our current focus, and certainly it integrates well with the NIFA priorities and global kinds of issues, is the banner of climate. That's a door most projects can walk through quite easily. But again, we're looking at multi-state projects that exist, or it could be a combination of multi-state projects that want to make the case with a little bit more help, they would just knock our socks off with impacts. And that could lead to some of the, competing quite well with some of the larger AFRI grants or other federal and or state agencies as well. So it's just a nice but unique and new incentive to be part of a multi-state project that is mature, fairly mature. It doesn't have to be old, but it would, with a little bit of help, would over the next year or two just knock everybody's socks off. That's a generic way to say it.
All right, thank you. We do have one question in the Q&A box. So can you comment on how a travel fund incentive for multi-state project participation may or may not be relevant in today's virtual world? I think virtual meetings are more inclusive, but they are discouraged by project participants who want to receive travel funds.
I love faculty members. Oh, man. certainly the last couple of years to present day, I mean, I'm not getting any Delta Sky miles by visiting Columbia to do a webinar. Neither is Chris. So we can do things differently. But one of the things that I firmly believe is, yes, a lot can be done with virtual kinds of meetings, but face-to-face, building those relationships, understanding, not constrained by, the next virtual meeting where you're spending a day or two possibly together with some peers that are hyper-focused on a particular aspect, gets way beyond just a little bit of travel money. What you're investing really is way beyond travel. It's your time. And that time invested this way for, a couple of days out of the calendar year is significant because it catalyzes so many different things that we touched upon in the webinar. So yes, well, even in those face-to-face meetings in today's world, if we could do that just routinely, most likely your NIFA people, for example, because they are members of countless number of multi-state projects, they will come in virtually, but so you can get guests, if you will, recognize guests, but you can enrich the meeting that way. I've also seen meetings structured where you have postdocs, maybe new assistant professors, to just put out some wicked challenges, some wicked problems where chalkboard, put it up there and work through some things and get feedback directly in an organized professional free-for-all that you just wouldn't get in a virtual meeting. So there's kind of those actual occurrences as examples. Chris, Shabu, anything to add?
I would just add to that the experiment stations generally just fund travel to one meeting per year. Now that we have the virtual technology, we could have some projects are going ahead and offering an in-person hybrid meeting once a year, as well as a couple additional Zoom meetings just to check in, rather than just leaving it to once a year getting together. So there's pros and cons to each, and I wouldn't want to do away with the in-person meetings at all, because not just the meeting time, but some of the social time afterwards, going on the tours, those are important. But it is important for meeting planners to understand the technology is available and be more inclusive and possibly offer hybrid options as well for people who might not have travel funds, can't travel, and that sort of thing. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm also seeing more and more hybrid meetings. As Jeff and Chris, as you know, I serve as AA for at least a couple of them, and I'm glad to see more and more hybrid opportunities. So if you are not able to travel, at least you can still participate virtually. Yeah. So I don't see any other questions, but I do have a question for the two of you. So do you see more senior faculty as part of this multi-state project, or are you also seeing a lot of our junior faculty participating? Or do you see a difference between the junior and more established faculty when it comes to multi-state participation?
There's no threshold, so there's no entry point. You can join at any point in time during your career as a faculty member. What I can say, and I can I'll think of a project I was AA on when I was out in the West. It had been around for, 5, 7, 8 different cycles, so decades. And you still had the retirees actually coming to the meeting. Why? That was their life, that particular topic. And these are the guys that have textbooks, virtual or otherwise, that were built upon projects over the course of time. And so the culture that had been developed in that one particular multi-state research committee was phenomenal. And I've seen that in a few, so that might be the exception, but you had a full spectrum of assistant, postdocs, industry folks, all the way through retirees coming because they saw such benefit from it. Now, new projects, likely some movers and shakers might be assistant professors. Once they understand the system and see it as an opportunity to create something from the ground up. And that's fundamentally, directors could create some projects top down. The richness of bottom up just can't be beat. And so there you might have, a larger proportion of assistant professors that have the energy and interest to get something going. And others may join in time that our associates are full. So it's almost project specific, but I'd say most of them have a blend of professors, and some of the benefits that I ascribed to them reflect that blend of time in the system.
Okay. Well, I've heard many colleagues say this, here as well as at other universities, that participating in a multi-state has been the highlight of their career. So, what you said about even retirees still continue to come to join these meetings. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
And I should add, at their own expense, right? Both time and money. Yeah.
Great. Wonderful. Well, Chris and Jeff, thank you very much again for your time today. And thank you for joining us. And well, thanks to all of you for attending today's webinar. Our next webinar will be on March 17th, a week from today, same time at 3:30. Dr. Noel Aloysius, a faculty member, jointly appointed in our college in the School of Natural Resources and the College of Engineering, will be our speaker. So again, thanks everyone. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.